Well, good morning, conference, and may I add my welcome to that of the Harry Sheriff. Jim, as always, we thank you for that, and we wish you well in your term of office. I noticed you didn't mention anything about the Glens, but anyway, that's another story. There are a number of special guests with us this morning. First of all, may I give a special Ulster Unionist welcome to MEP Jan Zahradil from the Czech Republic, and he is currently president of the Alliance of Conservatives and Reformists in Europe. Jan hosted some of us recently in Prague at the biannual conference of the Alliance of Conservatives and Reformists in Europe, which is the third largest group in the European Parliament, although not all members are in European Union countries. Even after the UK leaves the European Union, Ulster Unionists will still be members of this very influential group. And Jan, you are very welcome. And let's give him a good Ulster Unionist welcome. We also welcome representatives from Samopomich, which is a sister party from the Ukraine, sponsored by the Westminster Foundation for Democracy. Tom Elliott MP recently led an Ulster Unionist delegation to the Ukraine, and we are pleased that Samopomich representatives are paying a return visit here. So let's give them a good welcome as well. We're also pleased, we're delighted to welcome Adam Gale from the Friends of the British Overseas Territories and Annabel Shaw, Vice Chairman of the European Young Conservatives, also here indicating that Ulster Unionists realise that we are part not only of a wider Europe, but also a wider world, where we hope we can learn from one another. Please give all of our guests a very warm Ulster Unionist welcome. As you can see from your conference programme, after the leader's address, the Royal National Institute for the Blind will be holding a fringe meeting in the Hemlock Suite on the second floor of this hotel. The subject matter is My Health, My Business. For those attending, a sandwich lunch and refreshments will be available from 1:15 p.m. Please plan to attend and give support to this very important and worthwhile charity. None of us know when we may need to call upon their services. I would also appeal to you to visit the exhibitors at their stands outside the conference chamber. Not only do they represent so many worthy causes, but they also contribute significantly to the financial success of this conference. So please make every effort to visit them. A word of thanks must also go to our General Secretary, Councillor Colin McCusker, who along with John Moore, Hazel Legg, and all the staff have worked hard to make this conference weekend a success. Let's show our appreciation for their work. You will be aware that a Westminster constituency boundary review is underway. Proposals were published recently for 17 constituencies, which is a reduction of one from the current arrangements. We have had a committee looking at this since January, but even we were shocked by the proposals that involve a wholesale revision and the creation of 6 new constituencies that seem to have very little to do with the reality on the ground. Many of the proposals see major towns relegated to the margins of constituencies, and many local ties have been broken or ignored. Some of our county towns are split up and linked with districts that have no connection to one another. It is proposed that Belfast be reduced from 4 seats to 3. How could Belfast find itself in this position? Well, conference, I will tell you. Wind back the clock to the review of public administration that was supposed to usher in an era of more efficient delivery of public services. This was started in 2001, and in typical Stormont style, finished in 2014. That was quick, wasn't it? In a recent newspaper article, Nigel Dodds criticised the Boundary Commissioner's proposals. He said of the Belfast proposals for 3 seats, "It is important that Belfast is not shrunk to unnatural and limiting borders." Nigel goes on to say that, and I quote, "The idea of a 3-seat Belfast contracts the city beyond its true boundaries." The Boundary Commission have largely followed the new Belfast local government boundary that was formally established in 2014. For years, Ulster Unionists have railed against these boundaries. We argued that they shrunk Belfast to unnatural boundaries. For example, Ballybeen has been joined with Lisburn and Rathcoole with Antrim. We all know that the linkages are totally false. Who was at conference that drew up these restricting boundaries? Who acquiesced in their introduction, ignoring repeated warnings from this party? The answer is that those boundaries were drawn up and proposed by Arlene Foster when she was Environment Minister, and Nigel and his colleagues in Belfast, even though they knew they were wrong, did what they were told, rolled over and agreed to a totally gerrymandered Belfast. Nigel now complains about the city being contracted beyond its natural boundaries. I'll say this to him: too late, Nigel. The gutless response from Belfast DUP representatives is responsible for the mess they are in today. Back in 2007 and 2008, Michael McGimpsey and I went to Arlene and pleaded with her to make the local government district of Belfast coterminous with the 4 parliamentary seats constituency boundaries. She, under direction from Peter Robinson, remember him, refused. That is where the problem that Nigel Dodds complains about today started. There was a dirty deal between Sinn Féin and the DUP. The result was that Belfast was handed over to Sinn Féin domination, and the new creation of Lisburn and Castlereagh was given the Forestside Shopping Centre and its rates bounty in return against the recommendations of the Boundary Commissioner. This was the sellout of Belfast, and Nigel and his colleagues have the cheek coming along now to complain about the city being shrunk to unnatural borders. Nigel, this is your and Arlene's doing. You are both responsible. Your complaints against the Boundary Commission lack credibility. There is no hiding place for your dirty deal over local government. You wouldn't listen to anybody else. You thought you knew all the answers, and the city of Belfast is now paying the price. Whatever the final outcome of the boundary review, it will have to be passed by both houses of Parliament. And there will be consequences for the party, for the structure of our constituency associations. We will be drawing up contingency plans to put in place new structures after 2018. Well, we'll hear much more about this in the coming days, and I thank those on the review committee who have turned up consistently, and also to those who have done a lot of spade work with the numbers. This work is not finished by a long way. But I have to tell you, the Democratic Unionists and Arlene and Nigel in particular bear personal responsibility for this. It was their dirty deal that has left us where we are. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have an exciting programme for you today. We have some fantastic speakers coming forward, and I believe that we're really going to have a fantastic conference. So, thank you very much for listening to my formal remarks, and very welcome along today. Can I now invite Linda Bryant to interview 4 of our new MLAs. Linda will come. Linda, where are you? Yes, great. So we're going to ask you to invite some of our new colleagues up onto, and you will give them the 3rd degree. It will be brutal. I know we're going to have a fantastic interview, and thank you very much for undertaking this.
Thank you, Lord MP. Good morning, delegates. Well, we thought we'd introduce to you and find out a little bit more detail about some of the newly elected MLAs this year. As you know, we've had several of them. So would you please welcome to the stage the first four: Robbie Butler for Lagan Valley, North Down, Alan Chambers, from South Down, Harold McKee, and from Anna and South Tyrone, Rosemary Barton. Good morning to you all. So newly elected, congratulations, first of all. We're going to start with you, Robbie. Why did you choose politics in the first place, and why the Ulster Unionist Party?
Okay, I think, thank you for the question, Linda, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I chose politics and left a dream job in the fire service because I genuinely believe in Northern Ireland. I do believe that we can be the best small country in the world. I believe in the people of Northern Ireland, regardless of your colour, creed or religion. And I have felt for years that politics has sold us short. I haven't believed a lot of the hype that I've listened to, and I wanted to get involved with politics and try to make a difference, which sounds like every other politician's speech. The difference would be that I have no real political background. I have served the public and public service for over 20 years. I have a young family, but I was prepared to put my feet forward and put my neck on the chopping block to try and make a difference. And the important part of the question, Linda, is why the Ulster Unionist Party? For me, in all honesty, it was a no-brainer. I'm not the type of person who is robotic, who does absolutely exactly what he's told all the time, because at the centre of what I do, it's about people. And I see the Chief Whip looking at me and he's squinting. And the truth is, if you know me, I put people first. Yeah. And for me, when I looked at the politics, the political parties, the Ulster Unionist Party, consistently over the years, put people first.
Thank you. Thank you, Robbie, and we know you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Alan Chambers, you're also you're a relatively new recruit to the party. You came on board just about a year ago or so. What's your story then? Why did you come on board?
Well, Linda, I've been an elected independent unionist representative at local government level now for over 25 years, and I came to the conclusion that if I was going to be able to make any sort of meaningful difference to my country and to the well-being of my country, I would have to join a party to be able to achieve that. So it was a hard decision to join a party, but actually picking a party was the easy bit, the no-brainer bit. I wanted to join a party that was fully democratic, that had principle, that had integrity, and most importantly, had a vision. And the only party that ticked all those boxes was the Ulster Unionist Party under the leadership of Mike Nesbitt. Now, Mike keeps reminding us of the Ulster Unionist mantra of country first, party second, and individual third. And that's a principle that I can subscribe to, and it's a principle that the party subscribes to. Yeah. So I subsequently got selected to be a candidate for the Assembly election in North Down, and had the great honour of being elected to serve as an MLA. And on a personal level, I polled a previous executive minister and a current executive minister. So I'm now a member of the Ulster Unionist MLA team in the Assembly, and I can tell you it's a team, there's no egos, it's a team that's totally together, and the people in this room, maybe you don't all realise the hard work that goes up at Stormont, but we have a tremendous first-class support team, and we made a unanimous decision to go into opposition, and it was the best decision we have ever made, and I can assure you that the DUP and Sinn Féin are spooked. And when I hear the ridicule that's thrown at us, I welcome it. I love it. Because I know I know that we've got them spooked, and I look forward to the next 5 years
Right.
to spooking them even more. Thank you.
I think the people in this room know what a great job you're all doing. Yeah. Harold McKee, just moving on quickly to you. You had a pretty good apprenticeship. You were elected to council in 2011 before then taking the MLA seat. Tell me about your journey there.
Well, my background, I suppose, I never thought for 1 minute I would ever be standing here 5 years ago, 2011, 6 years. Fair enough, I made it through the council. 2014, I run for the Super Council, a good vote. I ran for the Westminster election. I topped the Unionist poll in South Down. By the way, welcome everybody, and particularly those from South Down. We were missing someone from South Down for about 3 or 4 years there, but thankfully we're back again. We're on stage.
You're here.
So thank you. So then we now have progressed to the Assembly here, and I believe I have been rewarded not only by all of you people who voted, the team who worked with me in getting me this far. Another important thing is I believe that I dedicate it to the roots for where I come. I come from a humble background, and I have never gone beyond myself. What you see is what you get, and the people know that, and that's what they want. Yeah. And I have listened to their concerns, particularly on the door. They've asked me, they know where I stand, they know where I'm going. I'm not shifting from the principles of which I hold. I take my guidance from the God above, and that's why I'm here today.
And it's the hard work in the ground that has got you here. Well done. Thank you so much. Just very briefly, finally, to you, Rosemary. Rosemary Barton, you've sort of swapped the chalk face. You were a maths teacher. Great respect for maths teachers. For a political life.
Yes, that's correct. But I must say, even before I went into teaching, I've always had an interest in politics. Politics was something that I grew up with in my home in Fermanagh.
You were quite involved with the unions,
yes,
weren't you,
I was
in your
also,
teaching life? That's probably a good grounding for this sort of a job.
When I started teaching, I became involved with the Ulster Teachers Union and was elected to be a member of their CEC, and then on to be president of the Ulster Teachers Union. And that was actually when politics was reawakened in me again after my university days. During that time, we had direct rule here in Northern Ireland, and I was over quite often in Westminster lobbying on behalf of teachers and meeting various MPs. And I thought, yeah, politics isn't bad. So that was it. I then gave up teaching and was elected to the council. And I've always had an interest in serving people, helping people, and working with people to achieve the best for them. And elected to the council, and then on now to be an MLA.
And you enjoy it. And just
yes,
very briefly
very
before we go, I know this is like a Trivial Pursuit question. You had one very famous pupil in your class, didn't you?
Yes. I taught Kyle Lafferty.
Thank you so much. Please welcome them and thank them for their contribution today. Robbie Butler, Alan Chambers, Harold McKee, and Rosemary Barton. Thank them all.
Well, thank you very much for those interviews. Linda, we learn something every day, and I'm sure when you see a name in the paper or read about it in a booklet, it's always nice to see the person behind the name, and thank you for bringing out those stories. The next speaker, I would invite Jim Nicholson, MEP, who will introduce our next guest.
Good morning. That's it. You're all live and well, and you're ready to shout. First of all, I have a great pleasure this morning. They've given me 1 minute. Let me tell you, I only take 1 minute from the people in Strasbourg because they don't know normally what you get to speak. But it's a great pleasure for me this morning to welcome someone, Saeed Kamal, an MEP from London. Hasn't got much agriculture about London, but he's an MEP from that area and looks after other interests. To the Ulster Unionist Party conference in Belfast, and in Belfast. He's been here before. He's always talked about coming back, and finally he's made it. Saeed, you're very welcome here to Belfast this morning. But you have to know, Saeed and I were in Strasbourg, and when you go to Strasbourg, you have to be very careful nowadays. You could get clinked. So we'll be back there next week to see what the next 5 rounds is going to be in UKIP. You finally dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, Saeed is the leader now. He became an MEP in 2005 when he actually he took a seat midway through the Parliament, and he actually took the seat from Theresa Villiers when she was elected an MP. You remember Theresa was our former Secretary of State, and he became the MEP. He's had quite a rise of fame. He's now leader of the ECR group, which is the group of the European Conservatives and Reformists group, to which we as a party are aligned, and it's now the 3rd largest in the Parliament. Much to a lot of people's displeasure, we have come a long way in that group. And I have to say that after the last election, there was quite a bit of speculation around Brussels. What would Jim Nicholson and the Ulster Unionists do? Would they stay with the ECR? Or would they leave? Because you have to remember the last election, the Conservative Party actually opposed us in this election. But Saeed and a few of us kept our heads. We didn't lose our position, and after that election, all that speculation remained. While it remained, what would happen? And I have to say, in the talks that I have had during that time with Saeed Kamal, he honoured every word, every agreement that he made with me, and we shook hands on it like gentlemen, and he has honoured them to this time. So I have a great pleasure in welcoming him to this conference this morning. We do not agree on everything, but that's politics. And when time everybody agrees with everybody else, then there's something wrong. But I have great pleasure in welcoming him and giving him a very warm welcome to Belfast, leader of the European Conservative and Reformist group, who's here. And I have to say also, the man I sit beside and vote beside in Strasbourg, Jan Zaradil, is also here. Stand up, Jan, till the people get a look at you. A real Czech MEP and leader of a party from who has come back in, and it's great. And it's one of those things I believe has been wonderful within the European context, is the fact that many of those people, like in Czech's home state of Czech, and I'm very careful not to call it Czechoslovakia because they're now 2 states, but they now have freedom like we have after being under the yoke of communism for so long. But can I give the floor now and invite Saeed Kamal and give him a warm welcome to Belfast to address you. Saeed.
Well, thank you very much, Jim, and thank you for inviting me to speak at your conference today. And can I also thank you for the warm applause before I started speaking. Those of you in politics will know you can never be guaranteed of applause after you speak. I have to say also, I'm still recovering from those of you that were at dinner last night, from the singing policeman. That will stay with me for many years to come. It is a pleasure to be here today because the Ulster Unionists are an important member of our European Conservatives and Reformist family. We've been very pleased to meet regularly with your party leader, Mike Nesbitt, on his visits to Brussels. And we were especially appreciative of the warm welcome that he extended to us when the group's leadership held a conference here in Belfast last year. So on behalf of the ECR group, can I thank Mike? Thank you. It has been a privilege to be the leader of the European Conservatives and Reformist group for the last 2.5 years. The political group, as Jimmy Nick said to you, is a member. And both my ECR members and I value Jim's experience, his knowledge and his advice. It is members of the European Parliament like Jim and parties such as the Ulster Unionists that have made the ECR the success that it is, but also ensured that Northern Ireland's voice is heard loudly in European politics. And that voice is strengthened by being part of a wider family. The ECR group of 74 MEPs from 18 EU countries, including from the governing parties in 5 of those EU countries, members of the European Parliament delivering the same message of reform. ECR MEPs calling for power to be devolved back from Brussels, not only to national capitals, but closer to people in our regions, our towns, and our cities. ECR MEPs warning that the migration, the security, and the economic crises we face demonstrate that we must take Europe in a different direction. ECR MEPs proposing ideas for the European Union to do less, but to do it better. As Jim said, when together we formed the ECR group in 2009, many commentators in the Brussels bubble predicted that the ECR would not last. They said it would be over by Christmas. They predicted that a message of reform would not resonate with the public. But within only 5 years, we became the third largest of the 8 political groups in the European Parliament, the fastest growing group in the European Parliament's history. How? Why? They asked. Because our message calling for change resonates stronger than ever before. And it's also thanks to the work of our MEPs, but also our members' parties, such as the Ulster Unionists. So thank you very much. Since we last met, much has changed. The United Kingdom has voted to leave the EU, and the Prime Minister has made it clear that we will be leaving. But Brexit has not spelled an end to the valuable work that is being done by the Ulster Unionists. The fight for reform continues. Ulster Unionists and Conservatives are still very much a part of that fight. We are still fully paid up members, with the right to vote until the day we leave. And we will do all we can to make sure that we have the best possible European Union on our doorstep when we become good neighbours and are no longer reluctant tenants. We will continue to stand up for the interests of the peoples of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We will continue to sit in the meetings, to negotiate and to vote in committees. And we will continue to work to ensure that our exit from the EU leaves us more united as a nation, not less. I know that you, as a staunch Unionist party, understand this point better than most. The whole nation now needs to come together to forge a new national consensus about our future. The Prime Minister Theresa May's message is clear. We want a country that works for everyone. And that means a Brexit that works for everyone, for every corner of our union. Now, it may seem like a tall order, but that is why we should build a narrative which pulls people together by delivering key principles: open for business, a stronger economy, providing more opportunities, not just for the privileged, but for all. And of course, there needs to be an understanding that for different regions of the United Kingdom, there are different concerns. Regional funding, research, agriculture, and fears over the return to a hard border are just as big a concern to the people of Northern Ireland as accessing the single market or freedom of movement. And these are all concerns that need to be addressed. The comments of the Secretary of State, James Brokenshire, and the Chancellor, Philip Hammond, have gone some way in showing that these are political priorities for Her Majesty's government. Brexit and the negotiations over the next couple of years will provide us with an opportunity to really take stock of what local businesses, local producers, and local workers want from our economy, to listen to the concerns of every corner of our great nation, an opportunity to re-establish our role as a leading global nation that benefits everyone and not just an elite. If the referendum has taught us anything, it is that as politicians, we still have a lot of work ahead of us in order to create a society in which all our citizens feel that they have opportunities to build a stronger economic future for themselves, for their families, and for their communities. We need to ensure that people see a future filled with possibility and opportunities, not trepidation. We want the people of the United Kingdom to feel that our push for globalisation has been of benefit to all of us and to them, that it will provide for our generation, our children's generation, and future generations too. But you will know that this can only be achieved if, as politicians, we speak the language of unity and not division. Both yours and my political parties had members and activists on both sides during the referendum. Both campaigned passionately. But we must make sure that it is not those differences nor those campaigns that define us, but that we are defined by how we brought together the two sides to deliver the best possible deal for those we serve. We must avoid at all costs the narrative of blame, anger, and defiance, as we have seen from some in the wake of Brexit, and instead keep a cool head and a steady hand. We should feel no pressure to rush into activating Article 50. We must do what is right for the UK and not what Brussels feels is right for us. What is clear is that Theresa May, who has huge experience of negotiating in her Brussels counterparts, is putting in place the preparation that is needed so that when Article 50 is enacted, we will hit the ground running. But this must not be a debate about a hard Brexit versus a soft Brexit or a clean Brexit versus a messy Brexit. It should be about how we deliver a successful Brexit that works for both the United Kingdom and the European Union. There are clearly vitally important economic, political and security issues that need to be considered with care and judgment. But do not think for a moment that either London or my colleagues in Brussels think that it will be easy. But we should not view this as an end to our relationship with the European Union, but the beginning of a new chapter. A new chapter which begins to build a better, renewed, more confident relationship with our partners across the Channel. We need to lay down the foundations of a long-term strategic partnership with our friends and allies in the European Union, of which there are many, particularly those within our European political family of the European Conservatives and Reformists. Turning our face to the rest of the world does not mean that we have to turn our back to Europe. It will always be in our interest to have a prosperous and friendly EU just a few kilometres or a few miles across the Channel. As an ECR MEP from Flanders told my party conference, he said, "You British live on an island, not a boat. You can't simply sail away. You will always be next to us, and we both need to work together for the common interest." So yes, we in the UK need the European Union to succeed. And to succeed, we need the European Union to reform. A globally competitive European Union next to a globally competitive United Kingdom is something that we should all want to see. The ECR group, with or without Ulster Unionists and Conservative MEPs, will continue to strive for a better European Union, because the voices of discontent with the EU's current direction reach far beyond the shores of the United Kingdom. For we are not alone in wanting to see a European Union that meets the expectations of its people. We are not alone in wanting to see a European Union which finds solutions to the many crises that threaten to overwhelm it. We are not alone in wanting to see a European Union that rises to the challenges it faces in the centuries ahead. We are entering a new chapter for the United Kingdom, where we will rebuild historical links, develop new trading relationships, and enhance our international presence. As the fifth largest economy in the world, the third largest trading partner of Germany, the second biggest investor in the United States, the fourth largest defense capability in the world, we will once again be able to shape our own destiny. Each new chapter brings new opportunities, and we must all come together and work together to make this happen, to seize those opportunities and to confront the challenges of the 21st century. Our exit from the EU was not about making our world smaller, but about making it larger. We must not retreat within ourselves, but renew ties with old acquaintances and reach out the hand of friendship to new ones. The Commonwealth, NATO, the World Trade Organization, the United Nations, these are all avenues for building relationships and building influence. With confidence, with determination, and with resolve, you in the Ulster Unionists, we in the Conservatives, and all of us in the European Conservatives and Reformists should have no doubt we will succeed. Thank you.
and gentlemen, we now continue on the theme, Linda and the New Faces.
Would you please welcome to the stage this time 4 further newly elected MLAs. They are representing Upper Bann, Doug Beattie, MLA. From Lagan Valley, Jenny Palmer, MLA. From South Antrim, Steve Aiken, MLA. And from Strangford, Philip Smith, MLA. Good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining us. We've only got 10 minutes, we have to keep it very brief. But let me start with you, Doug. So you are the party's spokesman for justice. And I would imagine with the life experience that you bring, it's an experience that some of us can only just imagine. Does that kind of shape how you do your job?
It does shape how I do my job. I think, you know, I think it's no secret that most people know that I'm a military man, and I've travelled the world, and I've seen how justice works throughout the world, and in fact I've seen how justice doesn't work throughout the world. So, you know, it drives the way I view things. It drives the standards and the values that I have in life, and it makes me drill down to some of the nuances of justice within Northern Ireland, and some of the very washy things that people are trying to do with no real end state to them.
Mm-hmm. Are there aspects of the job that you find are more interesting than others, or what are you enjoying most about it?
Well, here's an interesting. You know, I'm also part of the Privileges and Standards Committee, and I'm like a lone voice at the moment who is calling for less privilege and more standards. And I think, again, if I go back to my military background, and Steve will back me up on this, you know, we have a very clear set of values and standards, and I use them. So it's words like selfless commitment, words like courage, both moral and physical, and professionalism, and respect for others, and certainly loyalty. And loyalty sits really, really strongly with me. And as an Ulster Unionist, I've got to say, I am absolutely loyal to the people of Northern Ireland. I am loyal to the Unionist ideals. I'm loyal to the Ulster Unionist Party, and without a doubt, I'm loyal to our leader.
Doug, thank you. Thank you very much. Jenny Palmer, well, your specialist area is infrastructure. I would imagine that with all that's been going on and all that's to come in the near future, you'll have plenty to keep you busy.
Yes, indeed, and if you only listen at the debate where the York Street interchange this week is not going to be delivered by the Minister, and he has blamed our situation with Brexit for it, and he ignores the fact that we had £350 million additional funding going into this term to spend on infrastructure, and he says that his budget is £300 to £400 million shy. Well, where's the 350 million? So yes, it's a challenge. I enjoy the challenge. I asked him about Narrowwater Bridge, that it was a vanity project. He didn't like it. And he hit back and he said that it had been agreed in the Fresh Start talks. And I thought that there was no meat on the skeleton at the Fresh Start talks. But obviously, the two parties in the executive now, they have had their pet projects from the very, very outset.
Somebody said a wee while ago, let battle commence. Do you remember that? How's that battle going for you? You're up for it?
Oh, yes, yes, indeed. Every day is a challenge, and we have a fantastic team around us. And we have backroom team as well, and my own personal staff. So every day is a battle, and you know, we'll take the battle. This coat of many colours that I wear reminds me of the portrayal of Joseph by his family, and in a previous family that I came from to the Ulster Unionist Party, it reminds me about the loyalty that is expected within the Ulster Unionist Party and the integrity that is here. And I'm delighted that Lagan Valley now has two MLAs, and it said something about the people of Lagan Valley, and they were looking for change, and the Ulster Unionist Party delivered that change.
Yeah. Thank you. And we are enjoying having you in our family. You're most welcome in our family, Jenny. So let me turn to you now, Steve Aiken. First time into elected politics for you?
First time into elected politics, and like Doug, I thought you were going to say, were you going to take a submerged approach or whatever, a stealthy approach or whatever it happens to be.
No.
But yes, it is new into politics, and of course, getting into the Ulster Unionist Party is because I believe very strongly in what we're trying to do for Northern Ireland and makes Northern Ireland a much better place. And I can only blame it on two people. One, very clearly your husband, and two, Mark Cosgrove, who's sitting over there as the treasurer, who's grinning like a Cheshire cat. One of the key things that I kept on saying to your husband over years, being involved in the British Irish Chamber of Commerce and being involved in the business element of it, was what are you going to do about making Northern Ireland a better place? And Mike asked the real question to me and said, Steve, what are you going to do about it? Because when people like you don't decide that Northern Ireland is important, to get out there and make things better, nothing's going to change. And like Doug and like everybody else, we heard the call and we're here and we're making a change. And we have made a tremendous change in a very short space of time, and it's a great place to be. It's a great party, we're on our way, and we're making a big difference. I think it can't be much better than that.
You're enjoying it so far. Great. And finally, step into the spotlight there a little bit, Philip. Let's all see you. Strangford, of course, our own constituency, and you've been involved in politics and local government for many years. Former mayor, of course, you're the last mayor of Ard.
Yes.
And in England as well. But what has surprised you most about the House on the Hill, about stepping into the MLA role?
Well, I suppose the first thing, Linda and the new faces, sounds like a bit like a band, but don't worry, not going to sing here. I suppose the big surprise was twofold. Firstly, how quickly Vote Ireland and Stop Martin turned into Marlene, and the DUP Sinn Féin non-aggression pact that we appear to have. The surprising thing, of course, is it hasn't translated to effective government. And I think even the response to Brexit as one key example, and how we still don't have a plan for Northern Ireland 4 months after the event. But you know what, the Ulster Unionist Party does. And I think that's a contrast between us and them. And the second thing that jumped out at me was both parties talk about their desire for opposition, but actually they hate it. They don't like scrutiny, they don't like criticism, and they don't really do democracy. So they get very aggressive and very nasty. But we're fit for them, and we're going to give them opposition whether they like it or not.
It's very obvious to the viewing public that they don't like it. It's very obvious.
As Corporal Jones says, they don't like it Upland. Yes.
That's right. Again, just final, very brief question. What are you enjoying most about it? Is it that scrutiny role, or working with constituents on the ground, as we heard some, or is it just all of those things?
Well, the big thing, and I suppose it's a bit of a cliche, but it is true, the big buzz you get is actually making things happen for people on the ground. So when people have a real problem, you can step in, not because of you, but just because the doors that the three letters MLA open for you. And I think that is a big buzz, and something that I'm sure we all agree is why we're into this, and actually making things better for people on the ground.
Well, thank you so much. Again, like our 4 previous MLAs, you're all doing a great job, newly elected this year. Please thank them for taking their time today. Doug Beattie, Jenny Palmer, Steve Aiken, and Philip Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you again, the new faces. I hope you all feel that you know the MLAs now a little bit better than before, especially those who come from other constituencies and wouldn't have heard from them before. We are happy to go ahead with it. Okay. And this year of anniversaries, Conference 2016 is an excellent opportunity for us to engage in an act of remembrance. And we remember in particular the Somme and those who left this country to fight in foreign fields and did not return. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to hold that act of remembrance. And I would ask you, when it comes to the poppies falling, if those who are fit and able would please rise, and we will have our act of remembrance then. Thank you.
Kitchener wanted the Ulstermen, as he called them, to join up, and I became a bugler in the band. I remember marching down the Shankill Road to the old town hall. The great thing about the 36th Division was that they were all comrades, all from the one place. We were a very young lot. I was a stretcher bearer in the field ambulance. I was 16 when I joined up. We were supposed to be 19, and we said we were all 19. The comradeship had to grow and came to fruition in France. After the 1st of July and all the battles and horrors, and despite not getting home for 18 months, after a few days at home, I was missing the comradeship. I met men of the 16th Division, and they were great. When you were in the field ambulance, you were working at the front lines, and at Messines, we found the 16th Irish were on our left. Our first aid post was dealing with the 9th Royal Irish Rifles wounded, and over the brow of the hill, they were there in their wee dugout, and we went across, a couple at a time, to have a yarn with them, and they did the same. We became great friends with the 16th Irish Division. I want to say something about the 16th Division. We should not allow politics to blind us to the truth about things. Bravery and loyalty is not all on one side. We had the greatest respect for the 16th. It is widely accepted that the 36th were a great division, although they did not last long because they were cut to pieces, but does not need any politician to add that to reputation to make it fit into the Protestant tradition and culture. What I am trying to say is that it does not belong to one culture. To win wars, it does not need heroism, just every man to do his duty, a devotion to duty. We are all capable of doing that, or dodging it, whatever you choose to do. Alongside us were the 16th Irish Division, and I am talking about the Irish contribution to the war.
July was a lovely warm morning, and we were told all we had to do was slope our rifles, light our cigarette, and march on. But it was all right for those 50 men 50 miles behind the line with a glass of brandy in their hand. But to us, we knew it was not so simple, as we were up against something we knew nothing about. About 8 a.m, the gun stopped, the whistle went on, and off we went. And the first two waves were cut down before they got out of the trench. I was in the third or fourth wave, and I got about 50 yards when a shell nearly knocked out the whole platoon. And I was wounded and lay on the battlefield until about 4 in the evening. Nearly all were wounded or killed. The trenches were full of dead or dying men. To tell you the truth, I thought I would never see home again. I got back to the sunken road, and then I passed out. And I remember an officer woke me, and he had a revolver. He told me to advance, but I could not make it. He went on, but did not go very far, until he was blown up, and I remember thinking, you won't need a revolver where you're going. Then an ambulance came and took me down to the dressing station, which was a big marquee, and soldiers were lying on the floor, and I was put in amongst the dead and the injured. We never said anyone was killed. We always said he had gone west, or has got a blighty. There was a wee nurse whose apron was all covered in blood. She said she was from Devon. A lot of us thought that if we had Redmond's men of the 16th Irish Division to back us up instead of the 49th Division, we'd have taken Thiepval, because if Carson's man can do it, so can Redmond's. We got on the best with the 16th. They were good lads.
jolly occasion, but I never went to the field. I remember signing the covenant, the Women's Declaration, in the church. Nearly everybody did. I was only 18. I knew about the gun running on the County Down coast. The Newton Ards detachment of the Ulster Volunteer Force went to Donaghadee to unload the guns, which were then stored in the big houses in Bangor and along the County Down coast. At this time, there was no place for women in the Ulster Volunteer Force, but I remember Carson and Craig very well, and everybody adored Sir Edward Carson. I wanted to be a nurse, so I joined the Ulster Volunteer Force Nursing Corps, and I learnt about first aid and home nursing. And when Sir Edward handed over the Ulster Volunteer Force to the British Army, because they hadn't enough soldiers to fight the Germans, we all joined up together. I remember going to the Clandyboy camp when Lord Carson was there, but we were more interested in his new wife. We never thought war would come, but then the First World War did come. My first job for the Voluntary Aid Detachment was preparing soldiers for vaccinations. I was allocated to Dudley Road Hospital in Birmingham. It used to be a workhouse. And there I saw the awful wounds on the returning soldiers. I was shocked. In the hospital in France, you had to be prepared for anything. There was no set pattern to bomb and bullet wounds. There were feet and legs blown off. The trained nurses did the dressings, as the voluntary aid department weren't fully trained nurses. I saw young boys dying. I still have rosary beads from a dying soldier. He gave them to me when I was sitting by his bedside. It was very sad. We felt they belonged to us, and they were all very brave men and boys. I remember some of the cases of shell shock. They were terrible. They just lost their nerve. Their nerves were completely shattered. Of course, the army didn't recognise shell shock as an illness, and as nurses we could do very little for these men. All we could do was talk to them, but their conversations always came back to the war and the horrors they had seen. And of course, some of the worst cases were those suffering from gas, some terrible cases, and it went on killing even long after the war.
Please be seated. Could I first of all thank the speakers and the pipers and all those who were involved in putting together this fitting tribute, and thank you for your part. It's now my pleasure to introduce the keynote speaker, the Shadow Secretary of State, Dave Anderson. And Dave worked in the mines for many years and served as a rep on the National Union of Mine Workers for 20 years indeed. He has held many posts at local, regional and national level, culminating in becoming president of Unison, Britain's largest trade union. He was elected to Parliament for Blaydon in 2005 and became Shadow Secretary of State in July of this year. Would you please give a warm Ulster Unionist welcome to the Shadow Secretary of State, Dave Anderson. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can I begin by thanking you very much for giving me this great privilege to address you this morning. I'll try and remember to speak slowly because people say I have a strong accent. Even people over here say I've got a strong accent. Can I start by sending my condolences to the family and friends of Drew Nelson, a former member of your party, elected representative who served you for many years. I'm particularly pleased to speak in the wake of the commemoration of the 100 years since the Battle of the Somme. My grandfather fought on the Somme, and sadly he died in 1932 as a direct result of being gassed, so he was dead some 20 years before I was even born. We rightly remember all those young men who felt compelled to take up arms and who gave their lives for our country. The first formal duty I had in this post was to go to the commemorations this year at the Somme. I'd never been before, and I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that was a day I will take with me to my grave. I was particularly proud to go and watch the ceremony at the Ulster Tower and how moving that was, and a tribute to the great men and women from this part of the world. I'm always reminded when I make political speeches of a story I was told, I like to believe it's a true story, by Lord John Walton, who is sadly no longer with us. John Walton was a neurosurgeon, and he died last year after being a Lord for some 25 years. And he worked with me in the all-party group in Parliament on muscular dystrophy. And he used to tell this story about being clear, of not speaking too long at political gatherings. And you might know if it's true, but I think it's a good story anyway. James Molyneux was speaking at a meeting in Ulster in the mid-60s. And he'd been speaking for about half an hour. And a man got up in the middle of the room, packed audience, got in the middle of the room, started moving and pushing people out of the way and trying to make his way out. And James was obviously quite upset about this. He says, "Excuse me, sir, where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to get a haircut." He says, "You're going to get a haircut? Why didn't you get one before I started?" He said, "I didn't need one before you started." So I'll bear that in mind and try not to keep it too long. I'm delighted to be here on behalf of the Labour Party and particularly proud to be Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. I've been involved in Northern Irish affairs for almost a quarter of a century, through my trade union movement, and then as a member of the Northern Ireland Committee in Parliament, and also as Vice Chairman of the British Irish Parliamentary Assembly. While in the trade union movement, we worked hard to help deliver the peace process, and we coined the phrase that we were a non-partisan agent for change. It's that phrase that has and will guide my work in Northern Ireland. I'm glad to be here with you today because your party has a long tradition of representing Northern Ireland, and we can see that tradition continue today with the two great MPs that you sent to Parliament, my two colleagues, Tom Elliott and Danny Kinahan. You should take great pride in the way these men represent not just their constituents, but the whole of Northern Ireland and your party. They, along with many MPs like them, are working day in, day out to improve the lives of people all across Northern Ireland. Not just good MPs. They're not just good MPs, the good gentlemen, the good crack, but the decent, fair-minded people dedicate their party, our Parliament, and all the people of the United Kingdom. But they, like I, realise that while Northern Ireland has changed dramatically in the recent years, there's still much work that needs to be done. I met a couple of weeks ago with people from the Wave Trauma Centre to discuss how we can help victims as we continue to come out of a terrible period of conflict and destruction. Politicians from all across the political spectrum need to come together to do more to help people, particularly those who have been left behind for far too long. Many of those who have been unable to work due to injuries sustained during the Troubles are coming to an age now where they're starting to receive the basic state pension. These people have been unable to work through no fault of their own. The Stormont government should strongly consider the case for a specific pension for these people who've had to cope with serious conditions, both mental and physical. And if that's not possible, we in Westminster need to step up and say, we will work with you to try and resolve that long overdue injustice. We've made great improvements as a nation on how we treat and see mental illness right across our country, but there's still more that's needed to be done. 1 in 4 people will at some point in their lives suffer the effects of some form of mental or psychological illness. By not tackling this issue, we do a disservice to the people we represent, and it puts a huge burden on healthcare professionals and healthcare budgets. I recently met with the Police Federation for Northern Ireland, and I was shocked to discover from them the increase in the number of days lost to psychological illnesses. It's risen from around 25,000 a year in 2012 to over 37,000 in 2015. That's not just bad for the health of those great men and women, it's bad for our shared security, and it's also economic madness because they're having to cover with excessive overtime, and all that does is put a strain on the purse, but also puts a strain on people who are already stressed out. Now, how we care for our mental health needs to change right across society, not just in our healthcare system, because it can affect all parts of our life. We need to educate people how to best care for their own mental health well-being. And one of the saddest things I found out, ladies and gentlemen, over the last few months, particularly I was preparing to speak to my conference in September, was a sad reality that more people in this part of the world have committed suicide since the Good Friday Agreement was signed than were killed throughout the Troubles. When somebody told me that, I says, hang on, I can't see that on a public platform unless it's true. And the sad reality is, it is true. We've really got to do something to resolve that. And in my view, one of the best ways to improve the lives of all of us is through education. Northern Ireland has consistently outperformed the rest of the UK when it comes to educational achievement, and this is hugely welcome. But there's also a shocking disparity in achievement, and no more so in working class areas. A report recently published by the University of Ulster found that only 12.2% of Protestant boys in receipt of free school meals left school with 5 GCSE grades between A or C, including maths and English. How can we expect communities to move along, to build a more stable and more prosperous Northern Ireland if they feel as if they're being left behind? In a recent discussion with Glyn Roberts, the Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Retail Trade Association, he advised me that all this talk that we've all been talking about in political circles for what seems years about reducing council tax is pointless. He says, Dave, if the council tax was zero, it wouldn't help me when I've got 20% of the young men and women come to see me for work who can't read or write and can't add up. We've got to solve this problem. We also need to look at developing a proper industrial strategy for Northern Ireland. Now more than ever we see the need. You know better than me, ladies and gentlemen, the job losses at Gallagher, the job losses at Michelin, the potential job losses at Fujitsu, and even yesterday evening we're here, the Bombardier is once again under threat. These are good, well-secured jobs, well-paid jobs that will be hugely difficult to replace. And the impact will be felt not just on those individuals, but on the shops, the businesses, the communities they live in. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, as a miner who lived and loved in a great part of the world and saw his village destroyed after the industrial devastation that hit us in the 80s and 90s, I can tell you, the least worst thing was losing my job. The much, much more sad thing was living in a community that fell apart. I was burgled by my best friend's son. He would have been living and working with us. He had no future. He had no hope. It doesn't excuse him, but it's a real reason of what happens when stable communities fall apart. Working families will be hit hard with an economic climate like this, and it's key that the Northern Ireland Executive works to create a coherent industrial strategy, and we in the Labour Party are committed to working with the Northern Ireland Government and with other opposition parties to support whatever is needed to move this forward. As mentioned before by our colleagues from the European Parliament, we all know the biggest issue facing us today now is so-called Brexit. I've been told not to use the term Brexit because if you look logically, it doesn't include Northern Ireland, but I can't say UKexit because it just doesn't work. But the future in Northern Ireland is problematic. The issue around the border, the future of cross-border businesses, the future of our exports is unclear. The Secretary of State has not so far provided the answers needed to give the confidence the economy needs. Any hard border, whatever that means, will be disastrous. We have a Prime Minister who can't seem to make her mind up. Before the referendum, she said it would be inconceivable there would be no border controls, and yet 2 weeks ago she said, if we leave the EU, we won't return to the borders of the past. We need real clarity. We really need to get this resolved in everybody's interest. And I have to say it in passing. The last two Secretaries of State of Northern Ireland did this place no favours in terms of leaving the European Union. They were Brexit to the core, but they refused to allow Northern Ireland officials the scope to prepare for the result that they actually wanted. And this has led to a situation where there's a huge amount of uncertainty and instability, and it's impacting on the daily life of us all. Conference, it's now 18 years since the Good Friday Agreement was signed, and in many ways we can see the huge progress has been made. And I'm delighted, as was mentioned before, that you now have an official opposition of which you are part, and I want to commend you on that and give you all the strength of your elbow. Holding the government today of the day to account is a key part of the democratic process. And I can tell you, with sad experience, it isn't always easy, but it's key for the normalisation of politics in Northern Ireland. And we in the Labour Party will work in a constructive manner in order to help you to hold your executive and your government to account in this part of the world. There's a lot more work to be done in Northern Ireland, and issues around education, mental health and economic development are all part of it. I want to finish where Philip Smith finished, who was speaking before. Philip Smith, your MLA. Every time I go to a school, children always ask me, what's the best part of your job? And I always answer this: the best part of my job is being able to help people. And he's right. Those two little letters, you have three for MLAs, the two letters after your name do open doors. And it might be something trivial. It might be somebody who having trouble with dog dirt, or they want the back door painted by the council, but it might be something really, really serious, like people who come to me who've lost loved ones through medical negligence, or who've been hit by crime, neighbour distress, you name it. But it is the best thing that we do day in, day out. And I've got a great team of people back home who work for me, dealing with people that I never see, doing issues in my name, but really make a difference to the lives of the people we represent. And I want to ask you today to do me a favour. Help me to do my job, to help you and help this part of the world. In a couple of weeks' time, I'll be coming back here with Keir Starmer, who's got the responsibility in our party for leading on the issues around the breakup of the European Union. I hope at that time we can meet with people from your party and from business and from non-government organisations to play our part in helping you to transition into a situation where we're no longer part of the European Union, but we are still working together to make our country and our way of life strong for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. First of all, for taking the time to come to conference and for your thought-provoking address. And don't, Dave, on regional accents, we get regional accents here. We're in that camp, so thank you again. Moving on to the next session. There's a line in a song which goes, "Where have all the young ones gone?" Well, in fact, they haven't gone anywhere. And many of them were here last night. Many of them were here today. And the good news is they're here in greater numbers. And this session is handed over to them. And the title is Opportunities for Growth, Youth Development in the Ulster Unionist Party.
I was in Freshers Fair in Queens about 2 weeks ago. I went into the UUP stall and I really clicked with the guys that was there. They were really friendly and welcoming. I wanted to meet people of my own political views, which is unionism. I was brought up a unionist and I want to make a difference, especially for the female generation aspect of it, because I feel politics is very male-sided and I want to bring in the female aspect of it. I feel like we're underrepresented almost, and I feel like this woman needs to step up. I'm hoping to be elected in the student council at some stage and get to know, maybe shadow some of the MLAs and get to know the different roles and aspects that they play in Stormont.
My personal experience with the Ulster Unionist Party has been nothing but positive. I entered into it last year and the only reason I joined was because I knew a friend in it. And within weeks, I found myself so involved with the party. Within the first few days, we were meeting councillors, we were meeting MLAs, and you felt a part of the family almost, not a party. And that's why it was so interesting for me. The last election, we delivered over 20 canvases in 12 constituencies, and it was absolutely tough work. Every day I was getting phone calls, I was getting texted here and there and everywhere, but it was so rewarding. On the doors at the start, I'm not going to lie, was absolutely heart-wrenching. I was nervous, I didn't know what to say, some of them didn't go so well, but you soon got used to it, and every door you knocked and you gave them the leaflet, and then you'd even start to ask them questions. You'd say, do you have any issues that are important to you that you'd like me to answer? And you found yourself within minutes interacting with the people on the doors, and you found yourself selling your own party to the people. It made me feel a far greater part of the Ulster Unionist Party. I felt like I was getting something as well as the people at the doors. I think people are tired. They're disillusioned with politics. But when they open that door and they see a young person, for some reason they think it's something different. They say, this is new, this is the upcoming thing. And I think the Ulster Unionists really stand for that. They stand for young people. We're the biggest unionist party in Queens because we take the young people seriously. We take ideas that they want and we do them. We do social events, we do political events. We're a large group of friends rather than just people interested in politics. I suppose the greatest opportunities that the Young Unionists provide to work internationally would be the International Freedom Summit, which is this year was held in Porto, next year will be held in Helsinki. The purpose of that is to bring together like-minded political parties that are interested in freedom and civil liberty and things like that, challenge them and make them think about why they're in politics and what their purpose is and what they hope to achieve. We made sure that that Northern Ireland was firmly put on the map on the international stage at those conferences. I had the opportunity to attend the Peace Summit in Georgia, to an extent to share ideas and share concepts about how to ensure that societies are moving in a harmonious direction. We're out internationally trying to talk to people and ensure that our message and our recollection of events is not forgotten about by history. Politics offers an unprecedented opportunity to shape where you're from and to improve where you're from. Why I joined the Ulster Unionist parties, because I was really attracted to their vision. It's one of the best decisions I ever made, and it's given me unprecedented opportunities.
We're really interested in it, and I would encourage people definitely to try it and see.
The party is going in a great direction at the moment, and it's under great leadership. If you look at our team of MLAs, they are great. We have some of the best senior politicians out there, and some of the new upcoming ones, absolutely great. And I take a look at the members joining the YU today, and if even a small percentage of them was to go on to be councillors, MLAs, MPs, I think we're sorted. I think the future is very bright for the Ulster Unionist Party. The MLAs are so interested in the young people. If you are tired and you are disillusioned with politics, then don't vote for the same parties. And the worst thing you could do is not vote at all. Vote for the party that is going to make the change. Vote for the party that's bringing the new way forward, which is the Ulster Unionist Party.
Fellow Unionists, it's always an enormous privilege to stand in front of you and to say that I am the chairman of the Ulster Young Unionist Council. And I'm sure you'd agree from some of the young people who you've just seen that it's a great job getting to work with these people and get the very best out of them. Now, by all accounts, the Young Unionists have had an exceptional year. We have delivered our most active election campaign. We have presided over our largest ever increase in membership, and we have offered our most varied and exciting programme of events in recent years. This afternoon, you're going to hear from a number of our Young Unionists. You're going to hear from Jessica, who's going to talk about new branches. You're going to hear from Councillor Mark Glasgow, who's going to tell us what it's like being a Young Unionist councillor. And you're going to hear from Hannah, who's going to tell us about her work developing young female unionists centrally within the party. Now, the time that's available to us this afternoon is quite limited, and if you've been intrigued by our video and you want to hear more about the Young Unionists, I would really encourage you to read our 16-page annual report. And while I'm on this topic, I'd like to say a massive thank you to our Honorary Secretary, Neil, for all the hard work he's put in preparing this document. Our number one priority is to assist the Ulster Unionists at election time. During the recent Assembly elections, the Young Unionists delivered 20 canvasses in 10 constituencies, working closely with our candidates and local associations. Young Unionists are continuing to campaign, and we are currently working with our elected representatives to promote their new offices and their constituency surgeries. The Assembly election may be over, but the campaign for 2019 starts today. Over the past few weeks, the Young Unionists have had a strong presence at university freshers' fairs. We have recruited over 100 new members, and I am proud to say that the Young Unionists are the largest unionist party on university campuses. I am also proud to say that the Ulster Unionist Party was the only party represented at every university campus in Northern Ireland, showing that we are unique in valuing all students in Northern Ireland equally. I would like to extend a massive thank you to Hannah Niblock for all her work organising the Freshers' Fairs, and to all the Young Unionists who volunteered their time to promote our party with young people. The Young Unionists have also had an active year internationally. Some of you may have noticed that Young Unionists have been spending more and more time abroad. Now, contrary to some recent rumours, this is not an attempt to get away from me. Rather, it is an attempt to further our work with the European Young Conservatives. Over the course of the last year, Young Unionists have attended training events and conferences in Berlin, Cambridge, Porto, Tbilisi and Prague. Whilst this may sound like a lot of fun, there is a serious purpose behind it, I assure you. The European Young Conservatives provide opportunities for Young Unionists to network with Conservative youth wings from across Europe and to receive the best training and hear from the leading Conservative thinkers in Europe. The ability to learn from one another and through this to improve our political performance at home is one of the central objectives of the European Young Conservatives. We exist to identify and develop young Conservative leaders of tomorrow, and the Young Unionists are at the very centre of this mission. So colleagues, now that you're aware of the depth of talent that's available to you in the Young Unionists, I'd like you to do something about it. The talented young people in front of me represent an enormous asset to our party. In 2014 local government elections, Young Unionists took over 12 council seats. We have proven time and time again that when given the opportunity, Young Unionists will stand and Young Unionists will win. Now, I appreciate it's not always easy to make space for bright newcomers. Elected representatives often worry that we're after their seats. Nothing could be further from the truth. The seats that Young Unionists are after aren't currently held by the Ulster Unionist Party. When I stood in 2014, my team and I took a seat that was nominally held by the DUP. In front of me are a generation of Young Unionists who want to do that up and down the country. So conference, you have a new generation of young and enthusiastic members. They're tried and tested campaigners. They've received some of the best training and development on offer, and they're ready to make a difference. We care passionately about the principles of the Ulster Unionist Party, support for the union, normalising politics, and building a vibrant and sustainable economy for everyone in Northern Ireland. Over the coming years, you're going to see a lot more of the Young Unionists as we're knocking the doors, delivering the leaflets, and fighting the campaigns that we need to restore the Ulster Unionist Party to our rightful place as the leading party of Northern Ireland.
Good morning, Conference. It is a great pleasure to be able to speak to you today about my experiences in the Ulster Unionist Party and why about growing the Ulster Unionists is so important for the growth of the party as a whole. My name is Jessica Sproul and I come from the magnificent town of Omagh in West Tyrone, home of Ross Hussey and Chris Smith. I am in my final year of study at Queen's and I have had the privilege of being elected Secretary of the Queen's Young Unionists for a second year, a role I have been enjoying very much so far. I hadn't really thought about politics that much before I came to university. I knew what it was and that there were politicians working in Stormont, but I had never appreciated the importance of it until I became an adult and issues affecting Northern Ireland also began to affect me. What attracted me to the Ulster Unionist Party in the first instance was just how active the party was on my university campus, and particularly the actions of a member, Jordan McMullen, who actively reached out to me personally. It was the first time I had had a real engaging conversation with a young person who shared similar interests and views to me, and it was him who suggested that I should get more involved in the party. Of course, Jordan and I didn't agree on everything, but the one thing that did unite us, and indeed the rest of the party, other than unionism of course, is our desire to make life better for the people of Northern Ireland. Indeed, actions speak louder than words, so I am really encouraged to see the Ulster Unionist Party taking on the mantle of opposition alongside the SDLP to help secure good governance in Stormont. In my case, all it took was a simple, genuine conversation to show me that the Ulster Unionist Party was the party for me. And I have no doubt that there are many young people out there who are waiting for that conversation. That is why it is so important that we all take on the responsibility to speak to young people in our local communities, on campuses, in school, and in their places of work. Young people will not come to us. They're very busy. We need to go to them. In my own constituency, I have got involved during the parliamentary elections and the Assembly elections, meeting the local people in the area that I live. I found this extremely rewarding, especially when you receive such a great response from the community, and particularly people my own age. This is something I would encourage all our young unionists to get involved in when the council elections come around again in 2019. It is only right that I mention the growing success of young unionist groups across Northern Ireland, with 3 new branches recently being established in Fermanagh, South Tyrone, Tyrone, and Newry and Armagh. These branches encourage involvement of young members through campaigns, social events, maintaining links with the local associations. If you don't have a YU branch in your constituency, then please do not be shy, set one up and help your party to grow. Indeed, it is a major priority of the university branches to get involved in the area their campus is based. And for us at Queen's, the Belfast area is a great place to get involved. The Society are currently strategising how best to do this, mostly by forming connections with local representatives, and from there we can help the associations to grow. We have already heard from Alex about how great of success we have had on the university campuses, and I want to make sure that those who signed up on all of the Freshers' Fairs have the opportunity to get involved in the party at a local level the way that I have. On a final note, I want you to picture the party in 20 years' time, or even try to picture Stormont. How different will it be? How successful will it be? That success will be down to the youth of our party now, as they will be the party of the future. Thank you.
Fellow members of the party, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Glasgow and I am one of 2 Ulster Unionist councillors representing the party for the Cookstown DEA within Mid-Ulster District Council. First elected in 2014 at the age of 23, I was one of 13 young councillors elected to represent our party at local government level. Everyone at this conference today will know what the role of a councillor involves, but our young councillors play an additional role. That additional role is encouraging to our generation the importance of casting their vote at the election time. Over the years, we have heard far too often when we are out canvassing about the lack of interest that some young people have in politics and voting. But today I'm telling you that those days are coming to an end. As part of the role of a young councillor, we engage with voters of our generation. We use ourselves as an example to show them what their vote does within their local council. But also, it is a vote for the young people of our areas and across Northern Ireland. As young councillors, it is our responsibility to show the people just what we are capable of, and that politics is for everyone, no matter what age you are. The Ulster Unionist Party is greatly benefited by having the mixture of youth and experience that we do. Using my own council group as an example, there are 7 Ulster Unionist councillors, and when we are taking part in council debates, my colleagues give me advice when I seem to annoy the DUP and Sinn Féin councillors by telling them like it is. This is also replicated towards the MLA for Mid-Ulster, Sandra Overend. Sandra and I are in constant contact. I inundate her with calls, emails, and my personal favourite, the office visit, which normally lasts a good evening, so it does with a bit of crack. No matter what the issue is, I ask Sandra what her opinion is on the things that affect our area and outline my feelings and directions on the matter. In this way, I gain from the experience from my colleagues, and they gain from my youthful enthusiasm. This is what makes Team Mid-Ulster such an effective group. We respect each other's strengths and constantly encourage our colleagues. With the number of young elected representatives rising, this is the kind of team spirit I'm happy to see across our party. When I was elected in 2014, I was the new kid on the block. I was taken over from my granda, who had represented the party for 43 years at local council level. And this was a big challenge because I had big shoes to fill. When Granda and I went out to canvass, it was clear from what the people were saying to me that it was good to see a young man come to the door looking for a vote, and that they were ready for a new generation to be introduced. Since being elected, I have been very active in my role as a councillor because I want to make a change and I want to show the people of my generation that I can, I have, and I will continue to make a difference for the betterment of the people I represent. My motto is, there is no excuse for not trying. You should never lie down at the first hurdle because the only person you let down will be the person who asked you for help. As a proud Ulster Unionist councillor, I believe strongly in our mantra, doing what's right for Northern Ireland, and our brand of Team UUP. Our team of young councillors can't fail when it comes to getting things done because we have ambition, the drive, and the motivation to push forward to ensure that the people who have voted for us are represented. In addition to this, we show other voters that the Ulster Unionist Party possesses the effective team of young councillors, but also, standing and waiting in the wings, we have another batch of motivated and passionate future young elected representatives, and this is what I believe will be a key in our party's future. Members, I thank you for your time, and I ask that you would continue to support your local young elected representatives. Thank you.
Good morning, conference. How does one follow a speech from Councillor Mark Glasgow? I'm not sure, but I'll definitely try. Well, it's a great pleasure to be able to speak to you all today. My name is Hannah Niblock, and I have just recently started working in the Policy and Press team in Stormont. And I've been involved with the party for a couple of years now through the Young Unionists. While my role is primarily to deal with the trials and tribulations of policy and press, another part of my role is to look at how we can engage young people, and particularly young women, in our party. As a relatively young woman, I know all too well how daunting the world of politics can be. As a student, I took the decision to enter the world of student politics, firstly as a student councillor and followed by 2 years as Vice President of Education at Queen's University Belfast Students' Union. Elected representatives and those who work in politics open themselves up to all sorts of criticism. Some of it warranted, of course, but some of it not. You have to have a very thick skin. And for women and men, often the experience of working in politics can have very different tones. However, the underlying motivation is always the same. Everyone here is involved in politics in whatever capacity, simply because they want to make a difference to our local communities and to the well-being of society in Northern Ireland. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, young or not so young. Those who work in this party have a vision for the future of our country. And there are many women here in this room today who share that vision. Councillors, MLAs, researchers, young unionists, policy and press officers, constituency office workers, volunteers, campaigners, party members, party supporters, and our all-important voters. As a party and as young unionists, it is one of our major priorities to help and support women to achieve their political goals, whatever they may be. Indeed, elected office is not for everyone, and we value the contribution of all. In addition, we need to reach out into our local communities and attract local female talent into our party. We need the knowledge and commitment of women to ensure that this party is fighting for the needs of everyone in society, and that starts from the bottom up. We will be launching a number of initiatives this year, firstly to encourage young women to join the Ulster Unionist Party, and secondly to ensure that all our women members have the support and investment that they need. The Parker Mentorship Scheme, to be launched after Christmas, will ensure that the experience and knowledge of our members is passed on to those who are just starting out, while the enthusiasm of new talent will reinvigorate us all and help us to ensure that we are in tune with the needs of young people and young women today. In addition, training and personal development opportunities will ensure that young women who have committed themselves to our party can reach their full potential. Formal schemes such as those I have outlined are important for the future of this party, but nothing can ever replace the organic growth of our women membership. Conference, that will only happen if we all make an effort to get out there and speak to them. Having personal conversations with the women in your local community, working on issues that affect women directly and making sure they know we are doing it. Engaging with the organisations who represent the needs of women in society, many of whom are here today. And placing women as key strategists and political gatekeepers, both at a local level and centrally. To the young women of our party in the room today, I also challenge you to think about what your long-term contribution to this party and to the people of Northern Ireland will be. Have you thought about elected office? If not, why not? Conference, I challenge you all, just as I have challenged myself, to make the difference to our future and reach out or make a brave step. Together, we can make our goals a reality. Thank you.
Isn't it encouraging, ladies and gentlemen, to know that the future of this great party is in such good hands? So I thank Jessica, Mark, and Hannah for your organisational work with regard to the freshers events and so on. And I know that the others will not mind if I single out Alex Redpath for special mention for the work that he has done with the Young Unionists and the work that he continues to do in that field. Thank you, Alex, on behalf of the party. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I now hand you back to the party chairman, Sir Ray Jemby.
As Roy said, I think it was very encouraging to see young people here. It's obviously a challenge to get people involved in politics in general, but I think at least we understand the issues that we have to do it, and particularly getting younger women involved in politics. If we don't have a balance, then the policies that are produced will be very difficult to sustain. Now we're shortly going to play over to you the party election broadcast that went out last night. Every political party gets an opportunity to do this before their party conference. Some of you may not have had the opportunity to see it, and I would like now to have that played for you. It'll only take about 3 minutes, so if you'd be kind enough to pay attention to the PEB. Thank you.
In the beginning, Northern Ireland had a parliament. Elections were by majority rule, so the party that came out on top was the only party to form the government. But some groups didn't want to shape the future through politics. They chose terrorism, preferring the bomb and the bullet, trying to destroy Northern Ireland and its people. And another group was trying to ride both horses.
It got so bad, Stormont was shelled by Westminster, and the power to shape our future was returned to London in 1972. That opened a chapter of direct rule that lasted a quarter of a century. The Ulster Unionist Party argued long and hard to return the power to the people. Others refused to help, opting to stand outside the gates, screaming traitor and Lundy and never, never, never. We helped turn the corner that created the environment to encourage everybody into the political tent, ending the wholesale violence that was destroying our wee country. The last thing we needed then was an official opposition. Back then it was all about sharing power and finding common cause.
But since we started this leg of our journey in 1998, our circumstances have changed. The multi-party coalitions failed to deliver. The bigger parties used the smaller ones for cover when things went wrong. It became clear to us, it was time to open the next chapter, the chapter called official opposition. It was time for the Ulster Unionist Party to show leadership again by taking another big, mature step towards more normal politics for Northern Ireland.
As a party of opposition, we will do two things to make politics better. We will scrutinise the words and actions of this DUP Sinn Féin executive, and we will offer an alternative where the executive is failing to deliver, as we have done with our vision for Northern Ireland outside the European Union. The Ulster Unionist Party is determined that our journey will take us to a post-sectarian society where the issue is no longer identity, but who can deliver on the economy, education, on health and on housing? Who can you trust? Who is in it for the greater good? We are, and it's called Doing What's Right for Northern Ireland.
We're indebted once again to our team for producing these broadcasts and helping to promote our message to the wider public. I just wanted to reiterate what I said in my opening remarks to remind you that at 1:15, after the leader's speech and the formal conference is closed, there will be a fringe event run by the RNIB, the Royal National Institute for the Blind. As you know, they have a stand out there. They've got some guide dogs there, and I hope you visit them. But at 1:15, they have a sandwich, lunch, and light refreshments. Up at the Hemlock Suite, which is on the second floor. And I know that they would be delighted if you would join them. Their formal proceedings start at 1:30. They've been good supporters of ours, and I think it would be appropriate that after the formal conference finishes, if you would be kind enough to go up to the second floor, the Hemlock Suite, and there'll be sandwich, lunch, and light refreshments available at that stage. And I've no doubt that good Ulster Unionist delegates will be able to polish off one or two sarnies before they head home. But please go and give them support, and also make sure that you visit our exhibitors out here, because they, at the end of the day, are a lifeblood of our conferences. They help us financially, but also they do a full year's work, year in, year out, looking after many of the charities and other very important things. And they do appreciate the fact that if members actually go and call in with them, see them, take their leaflets, it only takes a moment, but I know it is very much appreciated by them and by everybody else. So we'll soon be moving on to the major part of our conference, but if you want to talk amongst yourselves for a couple of minutes, I'll leave you to it, and I'll be back shortly. Thank you. And the next speaker for you to listen to is, may I introduce to you, Colm Eastwood, MLA, leader of the Social Democratic and Labour Party. Colm, you're very welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much for your very kind welcome, and thank you, Reg. I was very grateful to be invited here by Mike Nesbitt, and I think this is the beginning of something very, very important. I'd say you're probably surprised to see a bearded leader of Irish nationalism standing on this stage today. But I'm also pretty sure that in a few years' time, Gerry Adams will be telling everybody it was him that was here. But we're all well used to that by now. At the beginning of this year, I think we were all of the belief that remembrance and commemoration would be the dominant feature of 2016. As it turned out, managing our momentous centenaries was the easy part. Throughout this year, both traditions on these islands have remembered the diversity and depth of our shared history with a maturity and an openness of which I think we can all be very, very proud. Unusually for us in Northern Ireland, it is our new political present rather than the weight of our own history which is proving so problematic. Whilst we were busy behaving ourselves in 2016, our outside world decided to test the very sinews of its stability. The Brexit referendum fallout, unprecedented flows in refugees and migration, continuing tension between a more protectionist or more open economic model, and the sheer awfulness of the violence in Syria and in particular in Aleppo. As things fall apart, the centre ground is struggling to know what is worth holding on to. Mainstream politics remains uneasy and unsure as to its place, its power and its purpose. As your leader Mike Nesbitt rightly identified, we are living in an era of uncertainty. The volatility of this moment has inevitably been seized upon by those who thrive on the politics of hate and simplistic slogan. But Northern Ireland cannot face inward amidst the bigness and broadness of this evolving world. We may live in a small part of Ireland, but there is a prevailing political wind blowing across our entire continent. In facing into that wind, though we should all be confident of one thing: there is nothing wrong in Europe that cannot be cured by what is right in Europe. Looking ahead, the future offers many choices, but the only future worth knowing is one which chooses cooperation. It is that very sentiment and its substance which has always been at the heart of the European Union. Building common ground and common cause is the only effective weapon in the face of division, the division and divisiveness which threatens the consensus of decency that is the centre ground. That is why the SDLP is so determined to retain the benefits of the EU and its membership across this island. It is that same principle of partnership which brings me to this stage today. If cooperation is required in Europe, it is equally required in Northern Ireland. Since the election, there's been plenty of interest as to whether the SDLP and the Ulster Unionist Party will work together in opposition. The answer is simple. Of course we will. We are already doing so. Only this week, we have scrutinised and offered solutions to ongoing emergencies in housing, homelessness, and in our health service. That will continue and expand during the course of this mandate. The commitment to cooperation does not mean absolute unanimity or uniformity, and nor should it. Let me state the obvious. We are different parties with different politics, different policies, and a different vision of the future. Our Irish nationalism and your unionism will not seamlessly fit anytime soon. However, this difference does not diminish our ability to pursue the commonality of our immediate cause. Both the SDLP and the Ulster Unionists share the common ground of wanting to make Northern Ireland work. That's a healthy common ground to hold for today and for tomorrow. The constitutional change of the future will be the product of persuasion. But amongst all the pleasantness, let me say something slightly more difficult. Let me say something about the possibility of that constitutional change. If the last year has shown us anything, it is that we cannot blindly trust the permanence of the status quo. As a Nationalist Party leader, I have been honest that we have thus far failed to develop a credible and detailed vision for what a new Ireland might look like. We're beginning that work. As the SDLP engages in that work, I would welcome if unionism began its own process of mapping out how it sees the future. The United Kingdom, as you know it, as we all know it, is no more. We all need to renew our thinking as to what political shape Britain and Ireland take in this new century. My appeal is this: try to convince us of your vision for the future, and we'll try to convince you of ours. Let it be a discussion based on hard facts and hard truths. Most of all, let it be creative. And then in time, let the people decide. That's the way politics is supposed to work. It's how it works when it's at its best, without threat and without theatrics. It is the generation of the newly refreshed kind of politics which is the big prize at stake at this time ahead, and it is badly needed. From a position in 1998 where politics here was shown to be creative and courageous enough to overcome the Anglo-Irish conflict, we are now sadly in a position where the public is unsure as to whether the executive ministers can really deliver any difference at all. That's had a real effect. Turnout at elections and trust in our institutions has plummeted. The biggest challenge of this official opposition is to begin the process of proving that our devolved institutions contain a power and importance beyond simply the maintenance of peace. True reconciliation here will not be achieved through warm words, but through practical politics, a politics which fundamentally changes the economic and social patterns of this society. For those who cast predictable cynicism upon the scale of this ambition, let them remember that both of our parties were the architects and builders of the institutions which stand today. It was our two parties who had the bravery to imagine and build the change we now live amongst. We continue to believe that high politics is capable of delivering the radical change we all wish to see. In contrast, the DUP and Sinn Féin have no such ambition or aspiration for our people or this place. They never had. They believe the symbolism of their coalition suffices and nothing more. They're all guff and no government. Even with 55 press officers, 16 special advisors and their new press secretary, they struggle to fabricate the illusion of progress. Together we must break up and break down that cosy establishment. We do that by building trust and credibility across this society. We do it by embracing the politics of partnership and cooperation. Let's be honest, we're not there yet. We have work to do, and that work goes on. Our success can permanently transform the politics of this place. Old battles of identity will be replaced by new battles of ideas. For me, for the SDLP, that's well worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Well, Colm, thank you very much for your address, and I think it gives us quite a bit to think about in the days ahead. Now, we're going to invite new councillors to come and say a few words, and I'll call you up one at a time. I invite Councillor Julie Flaherty of Armagh City, Banbridge and Craigavon Council to speak to us.
Well, thanks for allowing me to follow that one. I'm Councillor Julie Flaherty from ABC Council. The last time I was afforded a chance to speak here at the party conference before I was a councillor, I started by saying this: there's a reason why you meet people. Either you need them to change your life, or you're the one who will change theirs. This still sums up how I feel about the experience I have had since joining the Ulster Unionist Party, and now since becoming councillor for Portdown DEA on the Armagh City, Banbridge and Craigavon Council. A chance meeting with Joanne Dobson in the Royal Victoria Hospital for Sick Children, where I was with my late son Jake, was the beginning of this experience that has brought me from a businesswoman to a mother, to a campaigner, and now into local government politics. I am looking forward to adding all these experiences to the strong Ulster Unionist group we have on ABC Council. I became a committed campaigner the minute my son was born, and I'm going to bring that same level of energy to representing the people of Portadown. I am also delighted to be increasing the level of female representatives in local politics and in our council chamber. Our team in Portadown was delighted to see Doug Beattie MC elected to the Northern Ireland Assembly, and I am so pleased to now be able to accept the challenge of taking his place on council. I do, however, have big shoes to fill. I live in Portadown, I work in Portadown, and now I'm looking forward to working for Portadown. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julie. I should explain that the councillors speaking to you this morning are all people who took their seats to replace colleagues who were elected as MLAs in May. So that is the reason for them. Otherwise, we would have 90-odd people to accommodate at the platform, and I don't think you'd want that today. May I now invite Councillor David Chambers, Ards and North Down Council.
Good afternoon. I represent Bangor East and Donegal on Ards and North Down Borough Council, and I'd just like to add what an honour and privilege it is to speak here today somewhat briefly. I followed local politics from a very young age, initially due to my father Alan becoming a councillor, and during his 25 years in that role and currently as an MLA, my interest grew and grew. At almost every election he stood in, I climbed ladders in the dead of night to put posters up, and I walked miles every day in all weather to post leaflets. I was probably more consumed with election fever than he was. And, I always shared in the joy at him being elected and equally the disappointment of when he fell short. I often asked him why he stuck it out for so long, and he always told me it was the huge satisfaction he felt from helping people and the positive changes he made that enhanced the lives of those he represented. I was always told in politics, you get out what you put in. And during the months that I have been a councillor, I have felt firsthand that satisfaction and often drawn that lesson. I have performed my role as a proud member of the Ulster Unionist Party, who I feel are the most principled, forward-thinking and democratic party in our country. Thank you, and I look forward to attending many more conferences in the future.
Thank you very much indeed, David. Our next councillor is Councillor Jill McCauley, Newry, Mourne and Down.
Hi there, I'm Jill McCauley. After the successful election of my predecessor, Harold McKee, MLA to the Assembly in May, I would like to introduce myself to you all here today as the newest Ulster Unionist local councillor to the Newry, Mourne and Down District Council, representing the Mournes DEA. Mum of four and a farmer's wife with an enduring, somewhat fanatical love for politics, it was inevitable that I would pursue my notion to enter the world of local government at some stage. As the only female unionist councillor of any persuasion in our whole district, I am ready to help change the face of local government on behalf of this great party. Coming from a business and marketing background, I've always had a strong loyalty to the Ulster Unionist Party and what it represents. I have been a party member for almost 20 years and in an active role within South Down for the last 10. I've been involved in 8 very positive election campaigns, and I'm delighted to have been part of that strong team in South Down who saw us return a true Ulster Unionist back to Stormont against a lot of odds this year. I feel the time is now right for me to fulfil the role of a proud Ulster Unionist councillor, giving me the chance to make a difference to the quality of life for people in my local area. So I feel very privileged to be given this opportunity and certainly recognise the challenges that come with this responsibility. With that, I will strive to promote a positive and progressive vision for the future development of the Mournes area within Newry, Mourne and Down, and I will work very hard to deliver the strong representation that our voters and prospective voters deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jill. And now we move further north as I invite Councillor Nicholas Trimble from Lisburn and Castlereagh City Council.
Good afternoon, Conference. I'm Nicholas Trimble, and I was co-opted onto Lisburn and Castlereagh City Council through the vacancy left by Robbie Butler. I'm 29 years old and happily married to my wife Sarah. Both of us have our roots in Lisburn, and it's where, all being well, we plan to raise our family. I believe, well, I'm sure you'll agree with me, it's only perfectly natural to plan for your family's future. I believe it should be equally natural to want to plan for your hometown or city's future as well. For that reason, I consider it a privilege to be serving on the council, to be able to have my say and to help shape the future of Lisburn. I am surprisingly enjoying being a councillor so far. It's great to see things actually getting done, people's issues getting sorted, and local groups getting the support and recognition that they deserve. One thing that is infuriating, though, is seeing the DUP shoot down every idea that isn't their own. However, I hope they won't be able to do that after 2019. Thanks. One way or another, I've been involved with this party my whole life. As a young lad, I was press-ganged into stuffing envelopes in Upper Bann, and more recently, I have been planning campaigns and vote management in Lagan Valley, and I am proud to have played my part in our revival in Lagan Valley, growing from 0 MLAs to 2 in one fell swoop. Conference, I have every confidence that with continued hard work and support, we will continue this growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. And now we go to Councillor Diana Armstrong for Mana and Omagh.
Distinguished guests, party leader, delegates, thank you for inviting me to speak. I was co-opted onto Fermanagh and Omagh District Council following the election of Rosemary Barton as MLA. Unlike Nicholas, I'm not going to reveal my age, but like Nicholas, my family has a strong tradition in Ulster Unionist politics. Over recent years, I, like so many of my generation, my contemporaries, had felt slightly disengaged from local politics due to listening to the same old tribal conversations being carried out in the local media. When the Assembly elections took place and the Ulster Unionist Party decided to sit in opposition, I felt that this was a challenge to the status quo and that I really did welcome this. To me, it was a major factor in me becoming involved as a councillor to make local and national politics more democratic and meaningful to the person in the street. So I fully endorse the role of the UUP and the SDLP in opposition. Locally, my interests are in supporting economic development through investment, education and capacity building. Given my council's rural peripheral location, we face greater challenges in attracting inward investment to help our communities prosper. Our natural environment of lakes and mountains enable a thriving tourist industry. However, there's much more work to be done to create a world-class offering. I, along with my UUP councillors, will endeavour to seize every opportunity to create a vibrant, well-connected community in Fermanagh and Omagh District Council. And I'd like to just put on record my huge thanks for the support that I've received from my colleagues since taking my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the leader's keynote address.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for your party leader, Mike Nesbitt, MLA.
Let's make this
much indeed. Thank you to Colm. I feel like my work's done already. But there is a speech. It has been 12 months that will bring on big changes. The challenge is to identify opportunities and then to make the most of them. And we accept that challenge. We have moved already to address that challenge, even though others are still on the starting line. Conference, there have been major developments in this party in the last 12 months. The May elections transformed our Assembly group with no fewer than 8 newly elected members. No other party elected more first-time MLAs, and it's clear already that our 2016 group is acting as a team in a way the class of 2011 never could. There is a coherence and a cohesion that I think bodes very well for this mandate. Now, I know you've met them already this morning, but I do want to acknowledge again Steve Aitken, Rosemary Barton, Doug Beattie, Robbie Butler, Alan Chambers, Harold McKee, Jenny Palmer, and Philip Smith. I put on record my thanks to them and to our returning members who have embraced them as colleagues, and I applaud all of them for the way they have bought into the concept of opposition. You know, when I worked at UTV, the standing joke was that Frank Mitchell did 2 laps of Belfast City Hall every lunchtime just to see who recognised him. It's a variation of the old thing. The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. Well, Conference, we needn't worry about people not wanting to talk about us. In fact, let's do that, because earlier this year you allowed me to complete a full cycle of elections as your leader, so it's probably a decent time to review progress and ask the question, how well did we do? Well, 2 years ago, Jim Nicholson retained his seat again in the European Parliament, and given what happened on the 23rd of June, I think everybody should be very glad that he did, because I can tell you there is no British MEP, not one, who commands more respect in the corridors of Brussels than Jim Nicholson. 2014 also saw us record local government results beyond the dreams of most. Comparing like with like between the old 26 council model and the new 11 super councils, we achieved double-digit growth in our numbers. And then last year, we recorded not 1 but 2 successes in the most difficult elections of all, the first past the post general election to the House of Commons. And that brings us to this May and to the Assembly elections. You know I wanted better, and I know you did too. But we didn't do anything wrong. We had great candidates, we planned well, we published no fewer than 9 policy documents, not just a manifesto, but a vision for Northern Ireland looking decades ahead, plus detailed action plans on specific areas: mental health, cancer care, animal welfare. We campaigned, in fact, for Northern Ireland's first ever post-sectarian election, where the issue was belief in a party's ability to deliver on the issues that matter. Your vote not saying, support us, or you get one of them, and it's not vote Arlene, or you get Martin. And of course, the irony of that is this: when you vote Arlene, you're basically guaranteeing that you get Marty, because politically they're joined at the hip. So maybe next time we can persuade people that if you vote Mike, you get Colm. If you vote Colm, you get Mike. If you vote middle ground, you get better. Well, Colm is here, and I'm very glad he is, and without prejudice to all the issues we may not see eye to eye on, but also recognising our common aim of making Northern Ireland work, I offer you, Colm, a warm, personal, and a heartfelt welcome. And I know Claire Hanna is here as well. It's her patch. She's obviously keeping a close eye on you. Okay. Like the SDLP, we tried for an assembly election focused on bread and butter issues, but we all know from the doorstep that the fear factor remained dominant. I can't tell you how often I heard people tell me, "Oh, I'd love to vote for you, son, but we'll have to keep Marty out." Well, despite that, we left Stormont in March with 13 MLAs. We returned in May with 16. No other of the big parties grew their numbers. So I'm not saying it was the greatest result in the cycle, but in its proper context, it was a very, very solid performance. And in its own way, it did represent growth. And it completed a set of elections we can look back on with some pride and some satisfaction, but not complacency. So to anybody looking to press the panic button, to the very few who have jumped ship, and to the occasional whisperer and malcontent, I say this: are you so weak you want to unravel 4 years of work just because we didn't get all we wanted first time around? Are you so easily led that a siren voice is enough to make you change your mind? I'll tell you what I did after the elections. I dusted myself off, I gave myself a good kick up the backside, and I got on with it. So let's not fall for propaganda from political enemies who understand that a united Ulster Unionist Party outside the executive, free to criticise and to offer alternatives, is a serious threat, especially an Ulster Unionist Party working well with the SDLP. The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. I was at the Freshers' Fair at Queen's University 3 weeks ago. The Young Unionists signed 72 new members. 72. Not for the first time, the YUs are the biggest unionist grouping at the university. That is growth conference. Steady, sustainable growth. And the vision remains the same: a post-sectarian society where people vote on the executive's performance and on the credibility of what the opposition has to offer. We published 9 policy papers from the May elections. Each one has our logo upon it, the words, "Doing what's right for Northern Ireland." Doing what's right for Northern Ireland. Do you know, I heard the First Minister make that very commitment just a couple of weeks ago. You know where? The Conservative Party Conference. After 6 years mercilessly attacking us for our electoral pact with the Tories in 2010, 6 years in bed with Sinn Féin attacking Tory austerity, the DUP sponsored a champagne lunch at the Conservative Conference. No austerity there then. And you know, they seemed to think and sense they'd made a bit of a mistake with the champagne lunch, so they tried to say it was champ, not champagne. Well, for the avoidance of doubt, that's champ, that's champagne. You know, my vision is not just for a post-sectarian society. I want a post-peace process society. Because what is the peace process in 2016? I tell you what I think Sinn Féin think it is. They think it is a weapon. Anytime something inconvenient comes along, Sinn Féin call it a threat to the peace process. It helps to maintain the illusion that we remain in a state of transition, that there's something about our political challenges that need special treatment. It also helps keep the godfathers of the IRA in place on the pretext that there's a peace process that is incomplete and therefore could be endangered without their buy-in. Conference, I think Sinn Féin have milked the peace process for all it's worth, and it is time to move on. Time to end the implicit threat to stability that runs as a dangerous undercurrent through our politics. The peace process for Sinn Féin is nothing more than their weapon of choice for getting their way. Winston Churchill once spoke of a bodyguard of lies, and the peace process is now Sinn Féin's bodyguard. And successive British governments since '98 have been only too willing to sustain this state of affairs, in league with Dublin and with Washington. They've been willing to repeat the mistakes of the past, preferring to placate Republicans rather than uphold the law. You know, the main conclusion of the Royal Commission into the inquiry into the 1916 Easter Rising 100 years ago was just that. The report said, and this is a quote, "It was safer and more expedient to leave law in abeyance if collision with any faction of the Irish people could thereby be avoided." Well, only this month we've heard further examples of money supposedly ring-fenced for community development being filtered through so-called gatekeepers. It's happening on both sides. But it was this party who said, just because you have a past does not mean you cannot have a future. But that future has to be a 180-degree transformation of the past. I'm talking about people who've shown energy and commitment, which they've used in the most awful, illegal, and destructive ways. I believe it's our responsibility to encourage those who still have energy and commitment to use it positively for the benefit of their community. But we must also make clear we will no longer tolerate anybody whose focus is on exercising unwanted control over communities, lining their own pockets, or damaging our international reputation through racketeering and organised crime. If working-class unionist communities had wanted those gatekeepers to represent and lead them, they would have voted for them. The gatekeepers would be sharing the blue benches of the Assembly with us. But they didn't and they're not, although they may have proxies in one of the biggest parties. So it's high time we delivered an unambiguous message. If you want to work positively, we will help you. But if you do not, there will be consequences. And that is what has been missing over the last 18 years, sanctions. I have little confidence in the arrangements in the so-called Fresh Start Agreement. We don't want annual reports on progress towards the disbandment of paramilitary groups. We want disbandment today, with sanctions for non-compliance. It is a big ask, but nobody said delivering good government was easy, especially if you stray from your principles. I want a government that spends taxes wisely, protects its citizens, cares for the vulnerable, and punishes the guilty. A government that's fair, open, and transparent in its actions. And in return, I want citizens who aspire to be self-reliant, to take responsibility, work hard, pay their taxes, plan for the future, help their neighbours, and help the needy. And in a properly post-sectarian society, things would be different. There would be a focus on the track record of our executive and its ministers. Now, I know it's not the done thing to criticise our First Minister, but take a look at her record. As the Chairman said earlier, as Environment Minister, Arlene Foster allowed the new Super Council boundaries to be drawn up in a way that now has her colleagues jumping up and down with anger. Then, as our Enterprise Minister, Mrs. Foster presided over the scandal that is the renewable heat incentive, a scheme so badly mismanaged, it's going to cost over £1 billion sterling, and you and I and our children will pay for it out of the block grant for the next 20 years. And from the economy, it was finance at a time the public were rightly seeking an explanation for the NAMA scandal that has seen our international reputation dragged through the gutter as tens of thousands of pounds are handed over in hospital car parks. And that is only scratching the surface, Conference. And then, in search of a vote 5 months ago, the First Minister scaremongered on the doorstep. Scaremongered over the dangers of Sinn Féin, only to return to Stormont to vote for a Sinn Féin Principal Deputy Speaker, collaborate with Sinn Féin over the appointment of a Justice Minister, and collude with Martin McGuinness to use the royal prerogative to appoint a spin doctor. And on it goes. But think about it, Conference. The DUP supported Martin McGuinness, a self-styled, proud and principled Republican, to take unto himself the powers of a monarch, King Marty, to avoid a public appointment process. Of course, Arlene Foster also conferred those regal powers upon herself. A far cry, I would suggest, from her promise to hold rogue and renegade ministers to account. Holding ministers to account is our job, the official opposition, the first since 1972. And I want to put on record how proud I am of my MLA colleagues for the way they came to the decision. We fought the Assembly election seeking a mandate to enter the negotiations that were supposed to follow on from the elections. 2 weeks for the parties entitled to be in government, and here I quote paragraph 61 of the Fresh Start Agreement, to resolve the draft programme for government. You know we had 2 tests. We wanted to know, was it a progressive plan? And did we sense a determination for once from the DUP and Sinn Féin to work collaboratively with their partners in government to deliver it? They failed both tests on day 1. As we speak, that draft isn't even published yet, and the final document may well emerge between Christmas and the New Year, when the Assembly is in recess and you're not paying attention. Talk about a good time to publish bad news. Well, I am proud our MLAs were unanimous in the decision. We met twice that day. The first time we debated the pros and cons of opposition, and I made clear opposition can be an exposed and a lonely place. I suggested it could make for a long 5-year mandate. And I also asked them to think about what would happen if, miracle of miracles, the DUP and Sinn Féin actually got their act together, and how that would play in 2021 when we next seek a vote from the electorate. And I asked them to go away to reflect. They came back unanimous. Doing what's right for Northern Ireland is not an empty phrase in this party. The phrase is not just warm words. It represents a set of values that are ingrained in Ulster Unionism. Country first, party second, individual third. So as a responsible opposition, we will do 2 things. Firstly, we will scrutinise the work of the executive. And let me again emphasise, scrutiny is not synonymous with criticism. Scrutiny means taking a close look at the words and the deeds of the DUP Sinn Féin government, and if at the end of that scrutiny we think the executive has done a good job, we will say so. Low flying pigs withstanding. The other function is that of offering an alternative to executive policy. And I would like to say, like our document, Our Vision for Northern Ireland Outside the European Union, but of course you can't offer an alternative to nothing. And to date, the executive have offered us nothing on Brexit. No vision, no plan, no list of priorities. Meanwhile, the UK government has reconfigured itself to create a whole department with a Secretary of State for exiting the European Union. The Secretary of State for Northern Ireland has a business advisory group. The Scottish Government has an advisory panel, and so do we, the Ulster Unionist Party. And I thank the participants who represent the private sector, manufacturing, agriculture and agri-food processing, the universities, the community and voluntary sector, the trade unions. In short, all the people, the groups and the sectors who will be most affected by Brexit whenever it happens. Nobody doubts Northern Ireland will be the most affected nation or region in the whole of the United Kingdom by withdrawal from the EU, yet extraordinarily we are still the least prepared because of the paralysis of our DUP Sinn Féin government. For us, the days of Remainers and Brexiteers are over. Now, I know Colm and many others take a different view, and we have to respect that without necessarily supporting the position. For us, the people voted. The result is the result. And we must now plan for the UK's withdrawal from the EU and do so in a manner that will maximise opportunities for all the people of Northern Ireland, for unionists, for nationalists, for others. We recognise the need to ensure, as they're doing in London, in Edinburgh, in Cardiff and in Dublin, that we have the intellectual capacity and the backup resources in the right place to monitor live, as it happens, the twists and turns of the negotiations. We understand the need to scope this out, to identify the policy options, to choose the priorities, and critically, to assess whether our priorities complement or clash with the UK government's, because where there are clashes, we have a massive problem. We also need to know what we want out of the negotiations, and we've identified 10 key asks. Now, some come at no cost, others will require hard-nosed negotiation with the UK government, not least our calls for a step change in skills and education, and a massive increase in investment in infrastructure. Why pick those areas? Because we are fed up with a devolved government that thinks dependency is a good thing. Every time there's a problem, out comes the DUP Sinn Féin begging bowl, and it's off to London or to Dublin or to both. But if you cherish Northern Ireland, as I do, then you'll fight tooth and nail for the tools to make us less dependent on others. You'll argue for the infrastructure that represents a set of economic accelerators that will generate serious wealth for our people. Transport, communications, energy. Above all, energy conference. Not just the cost of energy, which puts us near the top of the league table of the most expensive in Western Europe, but security of supply. There has been a shocking failure to address the need for an energy strategy over the last 9.5 years, and I'm afraid that also falls at the feet of our current First Minister, who spent many years at the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Investment. If we do not act soon, we can look forward to sections of our population celebrating Northern Ireland's centenary by candlelight. We are already paying power stations to generate electricity we do not use because of the fear of failure in the supply chain. So, scrutiny and an alternative, those are the key functions of opposition at Stormont. And we have plenty of ideas, Conference. Ending our status as the fuel poverty capital of the UK. A social value act to recognise the importance of the third sector. Transforming the scope of GPs within the National Health Service. And in the wake of the NAMA scandal, regulation of the relationship between lobbyists and executive ministers, as they already do in London and in Dublin. Forming an opposition is entirely consistent with who we are. A party ready and willing to do what's right for the country, whatever the consequences for ourselves. I believe it has been a bold step, but a necessary one, for those of us who seek normal democratic politics in Northern Ireland. What we did in '98 was fit for the times, encouraging everybody into the political tent and away from violence. The last thing we needed then was an opposition, as we tried to create the environment where everybody worked together for the common good. But we're in a very different place today. We've achieved inclusive political frameworks. What we need now is a political system that actually delivers, and opposition will be the key to that. The First Minister welcomed it at the Conservative conference earlier this month. It will make us up our game, she said. No sign of them upping anything yet, but it's good to know Marlene are looking over their shoulder. It's been welcomed. It has been welcomed by the head of the Northern Ireland Civil Service, Sir Malcolm McKibben, and the Prime Minister, Theresa May, has welcomed the formation of the opposition. She wrote to me a few days ago, expressing a welcome for the fact, and I quote, "The institutions have evolved to accommodate an official opposition at Stormont." And I look forward to pursuing that conversation with Mrs. May next month. Of course, if the opposition is going to offer an alternative to the current executive, we need to convince the electorate that we are a viable replacement for the current DUP Sinn Féin government. And that does mean working in partnership with the SDLP, and once again, I welcome the appearance of their leader. And Conference, you will recall this is not the first time we've invited a senior member of the SDLP to speak to us. But I wouldn't hold your breath for the two parties of government catching up. But remember, vote me, you get Colm, vote Colm, you get me. Vote Colm and me, you get a whole new middle ground politics dedicated to making Northern Ireland work, whatever our motivations. As Colm said, we don't agree on everything, but can we find a way of doing business together? Absolutely. It's early days for the opposition, but behind the scenes I believe we're working well, and I look forward to better times ahead. Who knows? Maybe a shadow executive promoting policies that actually address and solve problems in a post-sectarian, post-peace process era for Northern Ireland. You know, the day after the referendum, the EU referendum, I met a couple of SDLP voting businessmen. They were shell-shocked, and they were angry at the Brexit vote. Because for years they'd been happy living in a Northern Ireland that was part of the United Kingdom. Their todays were about making money, educating their children, getting granny to the doctor. A united Ireland, that was for tomorrow, some vague time in the future. Brexit has rattled them, because the Belfast Agreement in '98 guaranteed the consent principle, and they never saw that being breached by a UK-wide vote to exit the European Union. Now, I have said that the days of Remainers and Brexiteers are over, but we must move on in a way that is mindful and respectful of the impact on our nationalist brothers and sisters. Conference, I don't believe identity can any longer be defined in the narrow binary terms of unionist and nationalist, of orange or green, Protestant or Catholic. The Belfast Agreement made arrangements to respect complexity. And we must honour that commitment and respect the fact that there will be new norms as we build a new Northern Ireland, one we can all take pride in. This year has seen the 100th anniversary of the Easter Rebellion, and the Ulster Unionist Party hosted a successful meeting in Dublin in April, making our contribution to understanding that very historical and momentous event. It may have been the first time since the 1920s, since the Unionist Party organised an event in the Republic's capital. By contrast, Sinn Féin used 1916 as a recruiting sergeant. They formulated a slogan which invited people to join the rising. Now, these are words that are designed not just to interpret the past, but to visualize the present and imagine the future. In reality, the events in Dublin that took place 100 years ago were led by a minority of a minority, but this year, nationalists like Colm reclaimed 1916 from that minority. And meanwhile, we remember that over 200,000 Irishmen were fighting to prevent Germany from subjugating a number of European states, including Britain. So let us remember, as we did earlier, the service and sacrifice of the 36th Ulster Division at the Somme. But let us also remember the service and sacrifice of the 16th Irish Division, as I do each year at Gilmore, a short distance from Thiepval and the Ulster Tower. Let us remember we have a shared past as we struggle to define and build a shared future. And let me repeat my call that all school children should be given the opportunity to visit the battlefields in France to observe our shared history. Meanwhile, conference answers on how to deal with our recent past still prove beyond the reach of the executive. And as a former victims commissioner, I feel I have some understanding of the issues from a victim's viewpoint. And as a citizen of the country, I also sense the way the lack of agreement infects our ability to build. And therein lie two unanswered questions. What do we mean by dealing with the past? And for whose benefit do we want to take action? Politicians tend to answer the first question in the narrow terms of seeking truth, acknowledgement, and maybe justice. But the legacy of the past is much broader than that. The severely injured from the 70s and 80s never had a chance to work and contribute to their pension. So there's a compelling case to fix that problem. And you know my view that the biggest and most toxic legacy is poor mental health and well-being. Not just the victims anymore, but their children, their grandchildren, and now their great-grandchildren. And my question is this: why wait until everything is agreed before moving to fix the problems that we already agree on? The other question is a bit more difficult. For whose benefit do we want to deal with the past? Is it for those most affected? If it is, we'll continue to look at the troubles incident by incident, knowing some will get a lot of truth and some will get none. And nobody argues differently. It is a lottery. We can continue to litigate the past, but it becomes a game of chance. It is random and therefore, in isolation, potentially reckless. If we want to do something that allows society to move forward, we need more than just new institutions that focus on justice and on information recovery. We need political courage. The sort of courage Her Majesty the Queen demonstrated on her state visit to the Republic of Ireland when she made an acknowledgement statement speaking of things we could wish had been done differently or not at all. Well, the Ulster Unionist Party governed Northern Ireland from 1921 to 1972, half a century, which ended under intolerable pressure, not just from the civil rights movement, which wanted to transform Northern Ireland, but from violent Republicans who wanted to destroy it in the same spirit as all the other international terrorist organizations of that time. I believe what we must think about is a series of acknowledgement statements from governments and parties. I speak to many victims and survivors, and they would welcome some high-end thinking on the past. The bottom line is this: people made choices. Republicans cannot justify their terrorism by blaming others. It is perverse to argue that somebody forced them to pick up a gun or a bomb. They made that choice. And if Martin McGuinness was prepared to make such an acknowledgement statement, he might be surprised by the responses that could follow from the British government, from Dublin, from Washington, and from local political parties. This is not just about some sort of shallow apology. It is about acknowledging our past, our choices, and their impact, often still felt today. I believe that could transform how we deal with the past. But will it happen? Will Martin McGuinness stop the nonsense of claiming circumstances forced Republicans to take up the bomb and the bullet? Will he admit it was a choice freely made and acknowledge the legacy of that choice continues to poison community relations? I do not believe anybody needed to die to get where we are today. Is he prepared to admit that he chose differently rather than maintaining we left him no choice? Sir Edward Carson warned us in 1920 in a quote in the Commons which I used in my first ever conference speech, and I want to repeat it today because it remains valid. He said, "If Ulster sets up an example and a precedent of good government, fair government, honest government, and has a government not for sections or factions, but for all, her example may be followed and may bring about peace." I think collectively we need to examine that statement and what we need to do to bring it to fruition. Mr. Chairman, before my closing thought, there are three people I would like to mention, all female, as it happens, and two Mrs. Nesbitts. Mrs. Nesbitt Senior is my mother. Most of us believe we have the best mum in the world. On this occasion, I'm right, you're wrong. I would not have achieved anything in my life without the unconditional love of my mother. So can I just take this opportunity to say, thank you, Mum. The other Mrs. N is my wife, also known as Linda Bryans, and I'm picking up the look Linda gives me when she says, "You didn't tell me you were going to do this," with a little hint of move on, and also a very clear bouquet of "you're sleeping in the spare room if you don't shut up." Being married to a politician requires endless patience. And you know what they say, behind every successful man, there's a very surprised woman. But in this case, also an inspirational one. Thank you, Linda. The third woman is our president. And I know what you're thinking, we don't have a president. And indeed you're right, but we will in a minute. We have three honorary vice presidents in Leslie Cree, Sam Gardner, and in Michael McGimsey. And now it's time for the president. So what are the characteristics of a good president? A lifetime service to the party, loyalty, determination in the face of adversity. Well, actually, we can all write that script, and we are blessed to have many, many, many members who would qualify for consideration on those criteria. But our president has something extra. If she thinks I'm doing well, and by the way, she's not afraid to tell me when she disagrees with what I'm at, but if she does give me the green light, she gives me strength, she gives me confidence, and she gives me courage. So in return, I would just like to give her a small thank you, an honorary role, to add to the many, many titles she's held in this party, a party she joined in the 1950s and has served without break ever since. So conference, this is the point where I ask you to join me in acknowledging our new president from Browns Bay in the constituency of East Antrim, May Steele. Thank you very much, Conference. You know, when Margaret Ritchie of the SDLP spoke to us a few years ago, she used a familiar phrase to close her remarks. I think she wanted to send out a signal to the big parties that the SDLP, and indeed ourselves, would not be bullied. And I think that's a sentiment probably worth repeating today to the DUP and Sinn Féin. The SDLP and the Ulster Unionist Party will not be pushovers, will not be pushed around in the opposition. And as Margaret so neatly summed it up in her last two words to conference, as she said, I say, no surrender.
Ladies and gentlemen, on your behalf, can I thank both Colm for his address and thank Mike for a very inspiring and thoughtful speech to us. Thank you again, once again, Mike, for your leadership. We are now going to conclude our conference. Can I remind you once more that the RNIB Fringe is in the Hemlock Suite on the second floor. And if you move up there shortly, there'll be a light sandwich lunch for you. Can I take this opportunity also to thank our principal guests. We've got Syed Kamal, Dave Anderson MP, and all the others who have contributed to this conference. It's been really encouraging to see particularly so many young people come along and participate in our conference. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to be upstanding for the national anthem, and that will conclude our proceedings. Thank you.